The capital of Standard Oil of New Jersey increased overnight from $10 million to $110 million. Reflective men had watched the growth of Standard and other corporations with apprehension and set about to let others know of the dangers they had cited. What dangers? Henry George's, quote, Progress and Poverty, end quote. That's a book you might want to look into. That's, again, Henry George, Progress and Poverty. Suggested the more we had of progress, the more we had of poverty. Do you think he was familiar with Marx? And Edward Bellamy's, quote, Looking Backward, described a utopia that contained no capitalists. Each book was something of a sensation. Both caused hundreds of thousands of Americans, who in no manner could be called radicals, to question the actions of industrialists and capitalists. Now we pause there for a moment. Miracle at Philadelphia by Catherine Drinker Bowen has an excellent entry on page 163. Quote, Filth was thrown into the streets, wells contaminated by backyard privies, typhoid, malaria, smallpox, the bloody flux, the putrid sore throat, diphtheria, swept through the cities in summer like a scythe. Rickets and scurvy abounded. These were the good old days, so often lamented by moderns of a romantic turn. The good old days is what we've been hearing described here. What do you call it? Looking backwards and the progress of poverty, going back to before we had all this poverty and progress. The good old days. One is almost surprised that 55 delegates survived to maturity in order to attend the Federal Convention at Philadelphia. So that's what they were looking back to. Just a little side note there. Then came Henry Demarest Lloyd's Wealth Against Commonwealth, which had a good deal to say about John D. Rockefeller. There's 3 books you might get and look into, because the change of opinion that they brought about set the stage within about a generation and a half. A little over a generation, they had set the stage for the Great Depression. So the ideas, the attitude in those books is very foreboding. You might get the 3 and read them. I haven't got them nor read them. But the Great Depression happened a little over a generation later, and it's no coincidence. Culture and philosophy are inexorably the cause of history. Continuing, however, the reformers were loose, and S.S. McClure, who had meant to be a mogul of magazines, set young Ida Tarbell to writing a history of the Standard Oil Company. This I thought we had mentioned before, but here it is at this point. This he ran serially in his magazine. It brought the story of big business and monopoly to that large public that did not read books. Out of it, accompanied by many other attacks, emerged the great whipping boy of capital. He was John D. Rockefeller. He became and remained almost until his death half a century later the favorite ogre of the United States. It seems likely that John D. was selected for the chief villain's part mostly because he was the most consistently successful of all of his kind. No one else is more successful, so he's the best one to pick on, obviously. An old-timer of the oil fields, John J. McLaurin, summed it up by saying that every man who failed in the oil business had a tale to tell of how John D. had crushed him. Quote, If a man anywhere in oildom drilled a dry hole, said McLaurin, or backed the wrong horse, lost at poker, dropped money speculating, stubbed his toe, ran an unprofitable refinery, missed a train, or couldn't maintain champagne style on a lager beer income, it was the fashion for him to pose as the victim of a gang of conspirators and curse the Standard Oil vigorously and vociferously. End quote. Standard Oil automatically conjured up the figure of one man, Rockefeller. John D. retired in 1896. He once told George Harvey exactly what, more than any other thing, he had contributed to Standard Oil's success. Quote, "We never deceived ourselves." This, I think, is a point we could belabor for just a moment. There's actually some successful capitalists in modern America who run very successful large enterprises. One of them was being interviewed by an objectivist from the Ayn Rand Institute. You'll forgive me if I don't remember any of the concretes, but he said one of the important things that we have our people say is reality is what it is. Things are what they are. So anytime you're facing a situation like the price of oil may fall in the future, that is the fact, and you just have to face that contingency, be ready for it, etc. You know, facing things is a big part. Facing things and take care of them is a big part of staying ahead of the competition, who just won't face things, won't take care of them, and might as well end up working for you. So it's just recognition of the fact that A is A. He says that was a big thing. We didn't deceive ourselves. The attacks on Rockefeller continued after his retirement and became so bitter and numerous that John T. McCutcheon of the Chicago Tribune was moved to give the old man a break. He drew a cartoon that showed Rockefeller standing before a large newsstand that displayed nothing but 200 different magazines and papers, all bearing either John D.'s name or his likeness. And in the caption, Rockefeller is asking, "Have you got something to read that's not about me?" He was pretty picked on back then, and we've inherited that in the myth about robber barons and such. When he retired in 1896, John D. Sr.'s personal fortune could hardly have exceeded $200 million. It had been made mostly from kerosene. Amassing it had taken some 30 years. In the next 14 years after 1896, up to 1910, the old man's fortune was more than quadrupled because of the internal combustion engine, which burned gasoline. Both kerosene and gasoline have their sources in petroleum, as you know. That's the end of our section on Rockefeller and Standard Oil. Just remember, folks, that originally gasoline was a byproduct of petroleum that they didn't know what the hell to do with, and that it was turned into later on it was turned into an important commodity. But oil was already very highly valuable because of the scores of other products you can make out of it. Today people forget how many other products are made out of petroleum, not just our fuel that we drive on. So be thankful for petroleum. And I don't know, if you're really worried about petroleum, the problem is that we're going to have it around for so long, not that we're going to run out. It's like coal. We'll have this dirty crap burning forever, even when we have nuclear power available, or digging carbon out of the ground and lighting it on fire. Brilliant. Okay, I think that's going to draw an end to the section on biographies of capitalists of the 1800s. I might visit some more in the future, but I doubt it. Now, I'm not sure what the next section of capitalism is going to be on. I'm going to have to reflect on that. We've gotten clear up into the 1900s and the Great Depression. I think we've visited the 1800s pretty well. We might do an in-depth look at the Transcontinental Railroad, or an in-depth look at the development of the steam engine, maybe from its early days in Britain. I don't know, there's a few different options we could take, or we might just let capitalism rest for a bit and try another series. We'll see what happens.